The Zach Attack is back. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us here today. So much to get into. Was debating about going live yesterday after our show with the offensive line help. We talked a little bit yesterday with Kayla Pace, who was excellent. Go give her a follow if you haven't yet. Great Jets coverage, but I'll break down the new offensive line additions, how that impacts the offensive line, and personally what I would do with the offensive line going forward and how I would do the arrangement. But the biggest news is according to Robert Saleh, barring a setback, which I don't see any because watching Zach in practice today, not wearing a knee brace, not wearing even a knee sleeve, Zach Wilson will be back against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And there is so much to get into. Again, guys, as always, the comment section wide open for you. Would love to hear what you guys have to say, what your comments are. But really, the big news, Zach Wilson is back for the New York Jets, and it cannot come at a better time. And there is so much to get into, so I'll get into it right away. But again, offensive line talk will be coming later about the two additions the Jets made, how they figure into the plans, and the impact of Joe Douglas. So let's start with Zach Wilson. Look, the good news for Zach is if you were to tell me, and if I look at the whole picture, that Zach was only going to miss 3 weeks after the injury he had in Philadelphia in the training camp, I would have signed up for that in a heartbeat. But Zach comes in at a good and a bad time. It's good because it's clear how much this team needs him. It's clear how much this offense needs his mobility back in the worst way possible. But Zach's got a lot of pressure on him right now. And look, some of it is self imposed, some of it isn't. Now, I've been saying for a while that now I think the Jets, while I love Zach's talent, I think Zach has the talent to be a great quarterback in this league. I do wonder if in the back of the front office's mind, there is concern with Zach because he's already missed 7 games out of a possible 20. And I did say when he was injured, if Zach Wilson does go down again this year, that could be a major discussion point for this organization going forward. But for the time being, Zach looks healthy. Zach is ready to go. And look, Zach, this season, regardless of the win-loss record, is about Zach Wilson. I've said it countless times over and over. The record in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter. The record will matter if this team is incredibly bad, like 4 or 5 wins, then you could see this organization potentially cleaning house. But the biggest thing this Jet team has to figure out this season is Zach Wilson the guy. And I've been on this record saying, look, I don't care if it's good or bad. I just want clarity with Zach Wilson. Either he can play in this league or he can't. Because the worst thing you can have is what the Dolphins had with Tua. And despite how great the Dolphins have looked, despite how good the Dolphins have been, there's still that question about Tua. Now, Tua underthrowing receivers, how much of this is the new offensive scheme in the receivers? And we saw it yet again that unfortunately health seems to be a major issue for him because we saw it already. Banged up, looked like he might have had a potential head injury. So despite how great Tua has been, I still think that even if you were to go to Miami, who is riding high as one of the 2 teams with an undefeated record right now, I still think there are major questions about Tua going forward and the long term he has with that franchise. The same thing with Zach. Zach has to prove it. Now, Zach brings certain elements to this offense, which in hindsight should be better. First and foremost, the mobility. We've seen the mobility, the ability to escape pressure, to get out of the pocket. But what I really want to see Zach do this year is use the mobility to create time in the pocket. I don't necessarily want to see him taking off on 30, 40-yard runs. I know he had an unbelievable touchdown run last year, but I would rather see Zach stay in the pocket, move around in the pocket to buy time, and move the ball down the field that way because I do not want to see him taking any more unnecessary shots. I don't want to see him running around and getting banged up again. That is the exact opposite of what this team needs. And the big thing with Zach, too, that I need to see is an understanding of this offense, but more importantly, being able to hit the gimme throws. we have been on Joe Flacco the last couple weeks for missing wide open receivers, missing wide open targets, and Zach needs to hit these guys. Last year, the accuracy, especially in the short accuracy, was a major concern. We need to see that buckled up. We need to see how he looks in that short game. And unfortunately, we haven't really gotten a chance to see him. Now, I also will say for Jet fans, don't expect Zach to come out red hot this week. This is someone that is coming off an injury, has just been practicing, hasn't played in a real game. Again, he played 2 series against the Eagles, but hasn't played a full game since last season. So let's give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt if he struggles in the first game of the season. Now, with Zach, I am looking to see how he disperses the football. The biggest problem he also had last year, too, or one of the biggest problems, was locking on to certain receivers and favoritism. And now you look at this offense, you have a lot of weapons and different weapons. And I'm curious to see how they're able to disperse the football and can he spread the football around. I'm also really curious to see how this offense will function because I've been screaming for this team to run the damn football. I've been screaming to look more like San Francisco, pound the football, take the pressure off Zach. And look, to help Zach, I don't want Zach throwing the ball 50 times a game. The Jets right now are on pace to break the pass attempts record in the NFL. That seems egregious even when you have a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen on your team, let alone Joe Flacco and potentially Zach Wilson. I really want to see this team establish the run game, take the pressure off of Zach, and then if you establish the run game, what does it do? It opens up the play action to his strength. You can get him to roll outside the pocket, which is something you couldn't do with Flacco. You can roll him to the right side of the field. That limits the window, so it's easier catch and go passes for him. And worst case scenario, he can maybe run for a couple yards to gain and get out of bounds or throw the football away. I'm really curious to see how this team utilizes the play action pass, especially with Zach. Are they able to incorporate that more? Because they didn't with Flacco. Now, was it more of the fact that Flacco doesn't have the mobility? I think that's part of it. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our content. Comment section is always open. Would love to hear what you guys have to say, your reaction to Zach coming back. But there's other big news out of Jet Country. Now, the first and obviously the most impressive one is Zach. But the O-line is adding more beef, which is good. And let me go on a little bit of a tangent here because I have seen certain reactions online. And I want to let you know where I fall on this. I've been seeing 2 points of thought with the offensive line. The first is blaming Joe Douglas for the current situation, and then the other is not fully blaming Joe Douglas. I don't think you can go to either extreme, but if you had to ask me, I'm 75% that this isn't as much on Joe Douglas as it is just bad luck and unfortunate circumstance. Whereas, yes, I will also talk about why I think Joe Douglas should have been more proactive. So let me start with why I am disappointed in Joe Douglas. And then I will talk more specifically about why I don't think you can put all this on Joe Douglas. I know there's going to be a lot of comments calling me an idiot about this, but let me try to explain where I'm coming from. Joe Douglas, when they entered the draft, had a grocery list of needs. And I even said, like, I wanted the Jets with one of the first 4 picks out of the top 38, wanted to take an offensive lineman. I thought this was a very good offensive line draft. You always need good offensive linemen. And personally, I didn't trust Mekhi Becton. And it's kind of ironic because at the time when I was doing these mock drafts and I was talking about they have to draft an offensive line, there was a big portion of Jet fans that were saying, oh, that's stupid. We have Mekhi. Why would you do that? They have Becton. They have Fant. And I expressed my concerns about the injuries. It's kind of funny how now all of a sudden those people are like, well, the same people are like, well, the Jets should draft offensive linemen, which I was pounding the desk for. To be fair, Joe Douglas has also drafted an offensive lineman. His name is Max Mitchell. He's actually doing pretty well for this Jet team. The biggest criticism I have seen about Joe Douglas is the following, is that they didn't have a Morgan Moses backup plan. The issue with that is Morgan Moses was a freak occurrence where you don't see a starting caliber tackle like that available at the point where the Jets got him. I will never for the life of me understand how Morgan Moses was not picked up, and that was a golden ticket that the Jets got with Morgan Moses, and it worked out perfectly. Because let's also be very honest. If you are a decent enough offensive lineman, teams are going to be desperate for you. And on top of that, you're not going to want to sit on the bench. No decent offensive tackle in free agency wanted to come to the Jets when he could probably start for 10 other teams. And with the Jets, it was like, well, we're going to put you behind Mekhi Becton, and we're hoping Mekhi stays healthy. But the best situation is you don't play. And even still, the Jets were looking at that market. They were interested in Duane Brown. They were talking to Brown the entire offseason. It really came down to money. And then finally, when Becton went down, they pulled the trigger on Brown. Now, the good news for Brown is news came out this week. He has been working out. It has been looking good. And there's a chance he could come off the IR. Now, I will get to Robert Saleh in the IR in a minute because there is a lot to talk about with that. So before you jump ahead of me, I will get to the IR issues. So my biggest takeaway was I was disappointed in the draft because, yes, I would have liked to see an offensive lineman earlier, but in the grand scheme of everything, the Jets found what looks like a potential future starting right tackle in Max Mitchell. And finding a tackle in the 4th round that is a starter is an unbelievable find and a great find. And to be fair, Max Mitchell has actually outplayed the first-round tackles like Ickey and Neal. Now, Cross has been unbelievable for Seattle, and he's been an unbelievable pick. So the other thing, too, is like, well, they should have signed more veteran offensive linemen. But my thought process to that, like I said, is if there are decent enough offensive linemen that could be starting, they're going to get an opportunity with another team. And look, no team expects to be on their 4th and 5th tackle. I mean, let's be honest. If you're on your third tackle, that is a major issue. Now, could you have said the Jets should have been more proactive because of Fant and the injury history with Becton? Absolutely. But to me, there really wasn't a great solution out there. And there was 2 types of free agents for tackles. There was either the starters that you had to pay a lot of money, which the Jets were not going to do because they already felt they had 2 starting tackles. And then you had what Duane Brown is. You had guys that were NFL tackles, but there were issues. Jason Peters, it was the age. And despite playing well at Dallas, he was also playing guard, not tackle. You saw injury issues. Duane Brown, it was age. Like, there was basically a take a break. There wasn't a Morgan Moses out there. And you saw it with Morgan Moses, a great example. I think the Jets wanted him back, but he got good money to be a starting tackle in Baltimore. Like, you don't see that usually happen where a starting caliber tackle is just sitting there for the taking. So, like, I saw a lot of vitriol about Joe Douglas. Again, I would have liked to see him add more tackle depth. But the other problem that the Jets had is there's so many holes on this team. They fixed the cornerback position in the draft. They added a pass rush from Jermaine Johnson. They added a playmaker, what looks like a superstar receiver. Now, with their tight end and Jeremy Ruckert, I really like the kid and I really love the upside. If some people are going to argue maybe in the 3rd round, but they still ended up with a tackle in Max Mitchell, who in the grand scheme of everything looks pretty good. So let's get to some of your comments, and then I will get to the IR. So can they get Braxton Berrios more involved in the passing game from James Pelini? Now, yes and no, James. I would like to see Braxton more involved, but he's also kind of a gadget play, jet screens, utilizing him as a hybrid running back. I'd like to see him more involved. But the other thing, too, is like the Jets feel like they need to get more people. I want to see Breece Hall get more touches. I want to see Elijah Moore more involved and put him in the slot, which is where Braxton plays mostly, and get Elijah Moore more involved. I want to see Corey Davis get more involved. Then I want to see these tight ends get more involved. Expectations for the Steelers for Zach Wilson. The Steelers might not have Minkah Fitzpatrick this week as a concussion. Look, Zach Wilson, and this is the thing with Zach. Zach doesn't have to be great. Like, the Jets offense is right now in the middle of the road with a backup quarterback that has the mobility of a tree. So Zach Wilson, especially with Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, these are guys that if you get the ball in their hand, they can make plays. Like Zach Wilson, if he goes out there, doesn't turn the football over, and just moves the football down the field, I think he'll be more than 5. And look, this Steelers game, to me feels like a must win. Now, the Steelers have an advantage. They're coming off the mini bye from the Thursday night football game. But again, this is, if you were to script it up, this is probably the best time to play the Steelers, where you have Mitch Trubisky, and it's clear they're not going to move off Mitch Trubisky for at least another week. You have a receiving core that's frustrated with them and a young receiving core that is still evolving. That this Jet team, especially after last week playing the Bengals, this will seem like a downgrade, especially playing the Steelers. They're a talented group, but they don't have the experience and I think the upside of this Bengals receiving core. On top of that, the Jets' run defense has probably been one of their strengths. I think that's what the Steelers want to do. And the Steelers' defense, like especially if Fitzpatrick's out, like this to me has to be a must-win game because you're talking about two of the most dynamic football players at their position, not only on their team, but without questioning the game. You have Watt, who might be the best pass rusher right now in football. And you have Fitzpatrick, who might be one of the most dynamic safeties, corners on the back, and he's such a hybrid player. Someone better hand Mike LaFleur how to play max protect football this week. Yeah, get the tight ends more involved, more 12 personnel. No problem with that. LaFleur comes down, tries to have Zach Wilson throw the balls 15 times a game. Yeah, I want to see more run the ball. Yeah, Jets need to make an investment in an left tackle next year. I agree. I would love to see that too. And look, I'm always a big proponent of getting more offensive line involved. Look, I want to see more offensive line involved, like especially getting O-line help. Look, I'm always a proponent, draft as many offensive linemen as you possibly can. Again, guys, we'll keep talking about the chat, but let's also switch to what the Jets did. Because again, I know Joe Douglas will get a lot of flack for what he has done in the offseason, but I have to give them credit for adjusting. Now, the Jets, a couple of interesting moves this week. Signed Mike Remmers, former Kansas City Chief, to the practice squad at 33-year-olds, and then adding a practice squad player from the Texans to the active roster in Cedric Ogbuehi. I've been trying to say his name right, so if I did say it wrong, I apologize. But this is a sign that Leger Douzable really liked. Former first-round pick of the Bengals, 21st in the 2015 draft. Biggest reason I really like it, 30 starts at both left and right tackle. And for me, I personally would rather have him start at left tackle than Connor McDermott. But it's a situation, too, where if I'm looking at the Jets right now, I feel like what they're likely going to do, which I hate, is probably start McDermott and put him on a short leash with Cedric right behind him. But look, Cedric has filled in, done a decent job, has some talent because of obviously being a first-round pick. I really like this signing. Remmers, I thought, might be elevated. And Remmers was an interesting one, too. And I did have a theory when they signed Remmers, and I am a little bit curious about how this works out because Remmers was a right tackle, mostly right guard. So I think that they brought him in for maybe even a little bit more depth internally and also at the right tackle position in case another injury happens. But I've been a proponent of moving Max Mitchell out to the left tackle spot. It seems clear that the Jets are liking what they're seeing for Mitchell. Sally even commented that he's ahead of where they imagined he would be, especially from a technical standpoint. In the right side of the Jets offensive line, it seems like you could have that set, and the Jets might have their right side of the offensive line, which is huge potentially for the next 10 years with AVT and Mitchell next to together. So that is very exciting. So my thought was maybe that they'd be moving Mitchell to left with Remmers, but now bringing in Ogbuehi, it seems like he's going to be a swing tackle, can play left or the right side. He's already on the active roster. I would wondering how up to speed he is. I feel like the Jets don't want to put him in on Sunday. And I think that the plan, if you were to ask the Jets, I think the general plan is that Saleh said today that Brown is coming along nicely. The hope is that he comes off the IR. So I think the plan is to survive this week, and optimistically, the plan is to have Dwayne Brown be the left tackle in week 5, Mitchell at the right tackle, and then you basically have Ogbuehi be the swing tackle. I'd rather have him over than Connor McDermott, the swing tackle so far. But it is curious, too, because one of the things I've been saying that I have a problem with Robert Saleh, and again, I understand as a head coach working in this business, they don't want to give away secrets. They don't want to give away bulletin board material. I get that. But Robert Saleh needs to take a page out of the Bill Belichick, which is less is more. Do not like if you're not sure, give little information because all of a sudden it went from we have another injury which seems to be blown out of proportion. Now, I don't think Jet fans are overreacting as much because of the way Fant has played this year. But I found it curious where at the beginning of this week, it went from Fant being day to day, maybe playing this weekend, maybe getting a rest weekend this weekend, be back in week 6, to now all of a sudden being on the short term IR, likely back week 8. So that obviously is not good for the Jets. The silver linings, it seems Brown is ahead of schedule. And look, it will be curious to see because Brown has a big contract with the Jets. I'm curious to see how he plays with the team, if he can hold down the left tackle. And that's the other thing, too. Laken Tomlinson has had a bad start to the year, but I am wondering if it's a situation like last year because last year, we were killing Connor McGovern at points in the season. And I kept saying, I don't necessarily think it's McGovern. I think it's more the fact that Greg Van Roten is such a sieve at right guard that's affecting his play. And I think that that's what's happening at the left tackle spot. The left tackle position has been so bad for the Jets this season. It's impacting Laken Tomlinson's play. So I'm curious to see what happens when Jermaine Brown gets back there. Can he stabilize? And the interesting debate will have to come up is, when Fant eventually comes back off the IR, what do the Jets do with him? Because if you were to ask me if Max Mitchell keeps playing this way, I'm playing him at right tackle. And if Dwayne Brown stabilizes the left side of this offensive line, look, again, he doesn't have to be a great tackle. He doesn't have to be a Pro Bowl tackle. He just has to be a serviceable starting tackle, which when healthy, he has been in his career at the very least. Then if you're the Jets, what do you do, George Fant? I would put him on the bench because the Fant situation, too, is Fant's going to be a free agent at the end this year. The Jets look like they have a cheaper, younger option, Max Mitchell, or right tackle. They've already given a significant portion to Dwayne Brown. Now, what I believe the Jets long-term will be looking to do on the offensive line, and again, I'm putting the cart ahead of my horse, is if Zach Wilson plays well this year and has established himself as the quarterback this year, that the Jets' priority in the draft next year will be a left tackle, even if it's a more developmental player, even if they have to sit behind Wayne Brown for a couple weeks to get them up to speed, and then eventually bringing in a future left tackle. Let's see. Steel game is a very, very, very winnable game from James Polini. If we are talking about the same things Monday morning, there's going to be big problems. Absolutely, James. Like, look, the bare minimum is this has to be a competitive game. It will be a loss will obviously be disappointing, especially looking at the way the schedule is. But if it's like the Jets are in into the last possession, something fluky happens and they lose the game, it'll sting. But at least you can look and say, okay, at least it was a competitive game. Like the Jets, to me, need to win this game, but the bare minimum, they need to at least have a good game because there's no excuses. They have their quarterback back. The first 3 weeks, okay, they don't have Zach, fine. Okay, the offensive line's bad, but now they have Zach's mobility, so this is a must-win game. You as our offensive line coach, you want me to be the O-line coach? I mean, it'd be a pay upgrade, so I wouldn't be opposed to that. But what is curious, too, because when I talk about the offensive line, I threw out all these scenarios, but it is clear, because I always say with organizations, they can tell you one thing, but actions always, to me, speak louder than words. And again, I've seen all the speculation online and all the, like the Charlie memes of basically like with string on the wall trying to piece together the perfect Jets offensive line with the current pieces right now. And I think it's clear that the Jets have made it clear that despite fans' hopes that some other left tackle would be playing or moving someone to left tackle, even in my opinion, moving Mitchell to left tackle, it seems clear to me that the Jets love AVT at right guard. They really are impressed with what Mitchell's doing at right tackle. They don't want to mess with that. They are keeping that right side together. And the hope is that they can, for at least this week, plug the dike long enough until Dwayne Brown comes back. Now, the one thing I will say about Dwayne Brown coming back is, I'm not going to lie, guys, I'm a little concerned. because the thing about Saleh is I can listen and believe him on a lot of things. But one thing I can never believe him on anymore until he proves to me differently is the injuries. Now, the Becton thing has been out of his control. But the way he worded Zach was ahead of schedule to then Zach's going to be out 4 weeks. Now, George Fant, all of a sudden, well, he's day to day at the Leafs, maybe a rest day this week and he'll be fine too. Okay, now he's on the 4-week IR. So when I saw the news about Dwayne Brown being ahead of progress, it's one of those things where I'm optimistic, but at the same time, I'm also looking at and going, okay, I need to see more proof. I need to see more evidence. I need to wait this out and make sure that this happens because it looks like there's a chance Brown could come off the IR next week, which, like I've said, would be huge because then you have a good veteran left tackle that can help. So head coach Robert Saleh said he isn't worried about the backup offensive tackle. It's next man up and rear Zach Wilson's knee is 100%. I thought it was supposed to be 110%. Yeah, I thought it was supposed to be 110%. So, but again, that mobility is huge. And look, offensive line play is really bad around the NFL. Like everyone's killing the Jets. And look, the Jets' offensive line is not great. I understand. But I do think there's worse situations. Like I think that the Giants have a worse offensive line right now, despite their investments. And look, the Cowboys were calling on Jason Peters. And again, he did a great job, but they were so desperate they called on Jason Peters to be an offensive guard. Like offensive line play in the league is significantly down. And I have multiple reasons for this. I think it's been a trend over years. I think that the biggest things you see for the reasons you've seen the decline offensive line play is number one, college football. I think the technique has changed a lot. You see a lot of guys, especially in certain conferences like the Pac-12 and the Big 12, never play with their hand in the ground. They're always in the 2-point stance every play. They're more of a project when they come in. So I think the technique in college is hurt. Obviously the biggest thing is the lack of practice is hurt. And really, guys don't want to play guys in the preseason, but of all the positions, I think the offensive line needs to play in the preseason. Not the whole preseason, but they need to get combined at least a full game. Like 2 halves of the 3 games. Like it is the one position you need to develop chemistry. And one of the reasons you see offensive line play, it's not just the Jets, it's around the NFL. It has been terrible. It's because you don't have the time to develop chemistry, and especially with a team like the Jets. The offensive lines that are succeeding right now are the teams that have had 4 or 5 guys that have stayed healthy and come back from the previous season. The Jets have had a lot of moving parts. And really, when you think about it, Connor McGovern is the only player on this team that was on this line last year in the same position that he was at center. I mean, you have AVT moving to right guard. You have Laken Tomlinson, who's a new addition. You have Max Mitchell, who's a rookie who's never been here before. And then you have the rotations at left tackle. And again, Fant played left tackle last year, but it's clear that the surgically repaired knee has been an issue all year. And if I'm the Jets right now, I don't think you can expect Fant to come back and be productive this season because this has been a left knee issue that lingered throughout camp. It lingered throughout the first couple games. And until it's 100% healthy, if it gets 100% healthy this year, it's clear that it's been a detriment on his play. And part of me wonders, was the move to right tackle to try to alleviate some of this? Because I'm trying to remember what knee it was with Fant. I thought it was the left, but don't quote me. I'm wondering if they were thinking maybe as the plant leg, he would get a little less pressure playing at the right tackle position than the left tackle position. But I could be wrong, and I digress. But still, I would start Cedric this week. I feel more comfortable with him at left tackle than Connor McDermott. If it keeps going this way, yes. And the one thing I do wonder, too, is will Robert Saleh jump in and call defense? Because, again, this is his baby. This is one of my biggest concerns is when you're supposed to be good on one side of the ball and that side is really bad. That's what I would – I think Saleh to me – sorry, I'm stumbling. Saleh to me doesn't feel like a guy that's going to want to fire anyone, but I do think he might jump in and call plays eventually. I don't think we're at that point yet, unfortunately. O-line's down across the league for like what you said. The Chargers have the worst left tackle out of Storm Norton. Hey, Storm Norton. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a decent player, but also he's got to be on the all-name team in the NFL. I mean, seriously, that name. I'm surprised it's not a freaking character in the Thor universe in Marvel. I mean, that sounds like someone like, hey, I'm Thor, and this is my main money man, Storm Norton. Build my hammer. Something like. Okay, I'm getting off this. I'm going down a tangent. I'm showing off my Marvel nerdom, but yeah. And look, Bakhtiari's coming back. Like, look at the Buccaneers. I mean, the Buccaneers lost a great guard in retirement, a great center, then the backup center. I mean, really, the best offensive line that's intact right now, if you had to ask me, is arguably one of the undefeated teams, and that's the Ravens. I mean, not the Ravens, the Eagles. Wrong bird. So I don't know why. It was like, okay, Joe Douglas camp. I went back a little too far. I went to the Ravens before I went to the Steelers. So again, guys, forgive me about that. But no, I know the Eagles. But I think that they right now have the best offensive line in the league right now. And look, with this offensive line, I feel like they're a better run block team than pass block. I want to see them run the football. To me, that's the strength of this Jet team. They're averaging 4.4 yards per carry, but they're only 30th in attempts. Like, I want to see them run the football more. And look, if you run the football more and you can establish it, it opens up the play action, opens up down the field. But more importantly, it keeps this defense, which is struggling, off the field. It allows them to get fewer plays on the field. And also it tires out the opponent defense. Like, the Steelers, the strength of their team is still their defense. If you can keep that defense on the field for 35 minutes, 40 minutes, that's going to be a huge impact in the game and help with you. Because when guys get tired and fatigued, they lose a step in their pass rush. It buys you more time. Mistakes are more likely to happen. So if I'm the Jets, I want to establish a time of possession. And one of the problems when you throw the ball like they've been throwing it, you don't take time off the clock. You basically get incomplete. You've maybe taking 10 seconds off the clock, where if you at least ran 2 plays, you take 1:30 off the clock. So I want to see them establish more of the run. I'm curious to see how they will do it. And look, I understand Mitchell's been better in pass protection than run blocking, but you have AVT on that right side. Like, run behind those guys. Like, seriously. Let's see. Just trying to see if there's any other Jets news that's coming out, just because, I know Sal's in this press conference right now. Again, says he's not concerned about the backup offensive tackle situation, but to me, actions speak louder than words. There's a reason why the Jets went out and signed 2 guys yesterday. Again, I always say, like, the press conferences are always tough too. Because I know fans, especially us as Jet fans, we latch onto what coaches say in the press conference. But to me, I feel like press conferences are half BS. Like, working in the sports industry, I understand that a lot of this is coach speak. A lot of this is just, not to create a story. And unfortunately, Sal has done that a little bit too much this offseason. But look, I always say, like, the coaches can tell you one thing, but the actions will tell you more. And the fact that the Jets, in the span of 24 hours, signed 2 offensive linemen, one's already on this practice squad. You have one that's already on the active roster from the Texans practice squad, is going to be suited up this week. It tells me that you are concerned about the offensive tackle depth, because if you weren't concerned about the offensive tackle depth, you wouldn't have done that. So once again, like I always say on this broadcast, actions speak louder than words. Like, especially when I break down the draft and when I do analysis, like, I look at what you do on the field, like how you do it. Like, to me, last week was a great example. Actions spoke louder than words. Quinnen Williams ripped the coaching staff, said, let's go home with 4. They started doing that. And look, Quinnen in this D-line started to back it up later in this game. So I have to give them credit. But one thing I'm dying to see, and I am really infuriated about the media, is, can someone at this press conference, if you can hear me, if you're in the sound of my voice, can you ask if Bryce Huff's going to be active this week? I'm getting sick and tired of basically not seeing him on the field. And the other thing too is, like, look, let's be honest, Connor McDermott for the Jets shouldn't be their left tackle. At best, he's the Jets' 5th tight end on this team. So those are my thoughts on Connor McDermott. Look, I'm not trying to be mean to the guy, but I've just watched him play and just, ugh. But look, I do think you'll see some rust from Zach. But to help with that, run the ball early, try to establish the run game against this defense. I understand the Steelers have a good run defense, but look, you need to establish the run, get this offensive line group, and more importantly, limit series. If you can only put your defense out on the field 7 times a game compared to 9 times a game, that's huge because you're only asking them, you're asking them to make less stops, you're asking them to, have less plays on the field. They'll be fresher. Like that is huge for this team. And I want to see them establish the run and really make a statement with this offensive line this week. Again, guys, open for comments. Would love to hear from you guys as always. You guys have been great with the comments so far. What is your thoughts about the Jets offensive line additions this week? Was there someone that you preferred in free agency? What are your thoughts about the makeup of this team right now? What are your thoughts on Zach Wilson returning? Although I did love Adam Schefter tweeting that Zach Wilson, he's expected to star left tackle Sunday against the Steelers. That's the problem sometimes with breaking news is your fingers are faster than your brain, and unfortunately, sometimes you make those typos. But I mean, the biggest thing to me, I'm watching video right now of Zach running around practice, looks healthy. The biggest thing is there's no knee brace on, and this also brings up the point too. If he's looking this healthy, could he have played this last week? And personally, I wanted him to play this last week. Selfishly, I understand it's better for the long term of this franchise, but look, Joe Flacco has no mobility, can't escape, and that's one of the reasons mobility is so important with quarterbacks. Like mobility used to be an addition, now it's a necessity for quarterbacks because the offensive line play. Offensive schemes are designing the quarterbacks to get out of harm's way with the rollouts, with the quarterback design option plays, with the quarterback bootlegs, with the option bootlegs, with all this motion. They're trying to throw off the defense and give this team more time. One off thing I would like to do too is I would like the Jets to steal some things from the Giants. Like there's a couple good play designs I liked with them with Daniel Jones. One really good one that I liked was almost like a double motion play because I want to see these tight ends get more involved. I know Conklin's gotten a lot of yards, but let's be honest, it's in garbage time. And I think you could do it with Berrios and with Moore, which is where they had the receiver come in motion during the pre-snap. They fake the option run to him, drop back in the pocket, but at the same time, once the ball was snapped, they leaked the tight end from the right side over to the left because basically the defense was cheating to follow the wide receiver, or was it might have been Saquon or the running back. It opened up the left side of the field for the tight end in the flat, and the Giants, I think, got 15 yards. So I'd like to see some innovation like that as well. BK back in the chat. Good fan of ours. Again, guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. If you joined us yesterday, if you join us after the live stream, make sure to put your comments. Again, guys, can't thank you enough for the comments about Kayla. She was awesome yesterday. We will definitely be having her back. She says she's more than happy to be back. She brought great insight for us yesterday. She's really got a great football mind and really diagnoses the game really well. I love talking with her. She was fantastic. So I did see a lot of comments about how great she did. I promise you she will be back on the show. I will try to see if she can be available next week, but at least within the next couple of weeks, she will definitely be back. I believe Flores is a solid game plan to get the ball off Zach's hands into the playmakers. Look, taking out Joe Burrow's playbook last week. What was the biggest problem with the Bengals? Was Joe Burrow held on the football too long. They weren't getting the ball out quickly. The Jets have guys now in Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios. Maybe not Corey Davis because Davis has struggled with the separation early, but you have guys to get the ball out quickly to, and they are so talented that they can take a 2 or 3 yard pass 7+ yards or hopefully even more. So if you're the Jets, try to get the ball out quicker. Try to get the ball to the flat. Like I try to lead Breece Hall out of the backfield. Run some wide receiver screen. Halfback screens. The Jets they have 2 backs that can really run the ball well and catch. Like I want to see them utilize that in the offense as well. So, and look, we had early in the chat, someone mentioned Braxton Berrios. I want to see him maybe with more jet sweeps. And look, even it doesn't even have to be playmakers like with the passing game. I want to see them run the football. Breece Hall for me is due for a big break. Like you saw in the Cleveland game, he had, I think, 9 to 10 carries, but it was averaging 7 yards a clip. Look, establish the run. Like, I don't think Carter's a home run hitter, but Breece Hall, if you give him enough opportunities, I swear there's going to be the big run is coming. You just have to first establish this run, though, game and really establish the offensive line. I'm going to temper expectations this week. If they get down if they get one first down and one tackle on defense, I'll be happy. they're reasonable expectations. Look, they got first downs. My biggest thing is getting in the end zone. Because as decent as the offense has looked in stretches, let's be honest, they scored 1 touchdown at home in 2 games and 1 was in garbage time. So I want to see this offense do better. Hopefully Zach does better under it. And look, the biggest thing with this defense is I want to see them buttoned up. Like, I know I keep comparing it to the Giants, but look, I don't think the Giants have as nearly talented of a defense as the Jets, but they've been disciplined. Like, when they don't allow the big plays, because when they get on a ball carrier, they wrap, they tackle, they don't allow the extra yards. They wrap, they tackle, they bring the guy down. Like, they're not talented enough to allow those big plays. And unfortunately for the Jets, like, I'm just seeing bad tackling, especially out of the safety position. That needs to be buttoned up. And I'm also curious to see too how this team attacks the linebacker position. I know they've had tryouts to bring in a couple linebackers. I know you're going to see a lot of Quan. You're going to see a lot of CJ. I am curious to see what they do at the linebacker position, because this is also a team that wants to load the box. Now, are the Jets going to do like an extra safety in the box and maybe play 2 safeties over the top? Like, one defensive alignment that I would be curious, and I think the Jets could do, is do a hybrid dime package with both Quan and CJ, but then you trickle down Alexander into the box. Whitehead into the box to be that third linebacker with Ashton Davis and Joyner over the top. They also looks like Sherwood could potentially start. I'm interested to see how they utilize him at the linebacking position. But look, the Quincy injury, I think, turned out as best as we could hope, being a couple weeks. Personally, when that happened, I thought he was done for the season. It looks like it's a couple-week injury. It's unfortunate because he was having his best game of the season. So hoping for him to have a speedy recovery. But I am curious to see what the Jets do with the linebacker position. Like, that to me is probably – it is kind of funny. Oh, this is great. Robert Saleh clapping back a report regarding George Fant being placed on IR. I don't know if those were my exact words. The doctor's trying to manage some dedicated rehab to get him right. We'll miss the next 4 games. Well, Robert, unfortunately, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, you did say at the beginning of the week he was day to day. And look, this is the problem with Saleh right now, is with the fan base and with the media, his credibility is being questioned because he's had this happen multiple times this year. Again, I give him a pass on Mekhi Becton, but when you are leading this fan base and the reporters, and look, let's be honest, the reporters, they distribute the information to the fans mostly. It's changed now where we can view press conferences live. Like, we're in an age where we're not as reliant on the media, but still the majority of the information that we as fans get is from the media. So when Robert Saleh is telling the media that's covering the New York Jets that there's a chance Zach could play week 1, and then the media is putting that out there to the fan base, what happens is when Robert Saleh then all of a sudden says, well, now Zach's out till week 4 in Pittsburgh. And then those reporters report it. Like, look, I love you guys, but Jet fans, eviscerate, especially on social media, those reporters and their credibility. And that, of course, doesn't exactly help with the relationship those reporters have with Robert Saleh. because I guarantee you that they don't love having Jet fans blowing up their social media, being like, "How are you wrong about this? Why is it? What's going on? Like, what changed? Like, is there a a, a re was there a re-injury? Like, reporters don't want to deal with that. And look, this isn't just an isolated incident. It's an incident that basically has happened a couple of times now, and now you have it with George Fant. Like, it's really simple. Robert Saleh, what can you tell us about George Fant? Appreciate it, guys. Right now, he's being evaluated. When we have an update, we will let you know. That's, again, it's not the greatest answer. People are probably going to not love the vagueness of it, but it's better than, well, right now he's day to day. He might miss this week for rest. And then 2 days later, oh, he's on the 4-week IR. Like that has to be cleaned up. And you can tell this is getting to Sal because the reaction to he was not happy. He's clapping back at reporters right now, which is telling me he is frustrated with the media. Look, and Monday, look, to be fair, he did say that the IR was a possibility. And he was waiting for the confirmation. But the problem is the way he words things. Like, I think Robert Saleh likes to talk, and he's a very personable person. And while that is a really good thing, and I like that from coaches, I think sometimes you just get in a situation where less is more. Like, it just feels to me that with this whole situation regarding Sal and the injuries right now, like, he says, like, well, okay, there's a chance he could go on IR, but he also could be day to day. Like, there's a lot of information, and unfortunately, I think a lot of this fan base, and I get it, like, the way this has gone the last 12 years, especially for this franchise, and even longer, you are desperate for good news. I mean, it's been a gut punch early this year with the Zach Wilson injury, with the Mekhi Becton injury. I mean, I kept saying throughout the offseason that they were the two biggest X factors to this team, and one of them's already out the entire season. And you just are like hopeful. And it was just one of those things too, where I think Jet fans saw the line, like, there's a chance he could play. There's a chance he could just need rest. There's a chance. And when you see that there's a chance, we lash onto that. We're hopeful. Like, this is what we're praying for. And then when we get the bad news, a part of it's like, okay, we were expecting this. But the other part of it goes into like, well, of course, this is what happened, because this always seems to be what happens. But again, guys, comment section's open. Would love to hear about you. Again, the biggest news, Zach Wilson's back, looking healthy, running around the football field. Look, like, Sal again just keeps putting his foot in his mouth with the media, though. Like, it's like, look, again, like, he said it was up to the doctors. Doctors made the decision. You can tell. I do think, like, just the way Salah's body language is, and that the way he's responding to some of these questions, you can tell, like, he understands that he's in a difficult situation. Like, he understands the pressure on him right now, and they still understand. Look, I understand that this is going to be a losing season, but I think Sal understands that there's a lot of pressure. Sal needs to simplify things, as well as the entire coaching staff. He double talks and sets unreal expectations. We fans are not dumb. We can spot fraud a mile away. This can turn ugly pretty quick. Carlos, like, that's the biggest thing with the Jet fan. It's not that he's lying to Jet fans, but it just feels like it's a lot of BS. And look, like, this is part of the problem. I do think that as fans, we appreciate when coaches are more open to the media. We want them to talk to us. And again, it's not like Adam Gase where he doesn't give us anything. But with head coaches, I think less is more. And I think Salah's kind of gotten into a little bit of a trap now, where he's trying to reset the narrative about him because he's gotten killed the last month for the handling of injuries, how he's broadcasted injuries, how he's put information out to the public. And look, I keep saying from a PR person, look, I get it's hard because that's his personality. Saleh is a personable guy. He enjoys talking. He's a teacher. He wants to try to put it out there, and look, he wants to be as honest as possible. But I keep going back to the fact, like, if you don't have clerical information in front of you, be vague. Yes, I know fans don't like it when you're vague. Yes, I understand media members don't like it when you're vague because fans want information. And when the reporters and the coaches don't get it, I can understand there becomes a frustration in the pipeline between coach, reporters, and fans. I get that. But personally, for me and you, if you guys agree or disagree, let me know in the chat. I would rather have a head coach that is vague about injuries. Yes, if it's a major injury, like out for the year, I do think they come out and be clerical. But with the fan injury, I think it could have been, it just simplify it. You get asked the question on Monday. Right now, the doctors are evaluating George Fant. We will provide you an update when we have the information. Short, sweet, and to the point. It basically doesn't give you an answer, but it does tell you that everything's not perfect. The doctors are evaluating him. And if there's but what do you mean the doctors are evaluating him? They're going through the medical process. They're going to check everything. And once we have all the information, we will provide the information to you. Look, I understand that for some fans, they don't like that. I understand for media members, they will not like that. But if I'm the head coach, I'm not giving out that information because, especially with how the season has gone with the injuries for the Jets, and a part of me, I think Saleh does feel bad for us as fans. I think Saleh wants there to be good news. I think Saleh understands our frustration. I think Saleh gets that people are pissed at him and Jet fans don't trust him. And I think he's trying to earn that trust back. But the problem is sometimes you can go a little bit too far with that. Really, for me, if you want to rebuild trust in this fan base, you do it on the field. Like, Jet fans will not care what you do in the press conference. They will not care. They care about what you do on the field. Yes, the press conferences during the week, like in the short term, some people remember, but long term, people will not care about the press conferences as long as you win football games, as long as this defense looks respectable, as long as this team goes out there and competes, as long as this team doesn't look like a laughingstock out there, as long as this team is competitive week in and week out and shows growth and shows potential and shows that they are still continuing to go in the right direction. And right now, like, I can get where this fan base is coming from with the frustration. Yeah, just win, baby. Melvin, can't agree with you more. What do you think the score will be this week? I will give the preview on Friday. Again, guys, I got to give you teases. I can't give you everything in one episode. You got to keep coming back and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. So we will give our full preview on Friday. I might be having a special guest for that preview on Friday. Got to get some confirmation in there, but working on a couple things behind the scenes. So we might have a special guest for the preview for the Sunday game. And of course, our live reaction right after the game Sunday, where we will go live to talk about the game, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, Zach's first performance, the offensive line, what offensive line went out there. But look, the other thing that doesn't get talked about too enough is this from Dennis. I agree. I don't know where there's pressure to answer these questions. Bill Parcells was on Belichick just like Belichick. Look, it's hard because you can tell, like, Robert Saleh, like, reminds me in a sense of Rex Ryan. Like, he's one of those coaches, like, if you were to just walk up to him on a bar, like, you could talk to him for an hour and you'd still have a full conversation. Like Bill Belichick, I don't think you could talk to for 5 minutes. Mike Remmer's on the field already, making his acquaintance known. I can see him out there stretching with the Jets team. has been a starting right tackle in the NFL. Of course, injured his right knee last year, medically clear. I'm curious to see if he gets elevated to the main roster. And it could be intriguing, too, because he's also played guard. I'm curious to see where they play him. And it's funny, too, because they brought in Remmers, and a part of me was thinking, because I've talked at nauseum about this. Like, I wouldn't mind moving Mitchell to left tackle. I think he's proven that he's at least serviceable in pass blocking. And look, he played the last 2 years in college at left tackle. So I don't think it would be that big of a deal to move him to left tackle. So I am curious to see what the Jets do in that regard. So it will be interesting. I think a lot will tell you how they activate players for the game. If Remmer's on the active roster, could they, if they struggle early, move Mitchell to left and Remmers into right? I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities because Remmers, he has played left before, but his career, I think he's played 2 games at left. It was between 2 and 4 games with my research, but primarily it's been right tackle and guard in his career. So I don't think you're going to put him at the left tackle position. Anyone but Condoline. Remmer couldn't be worse. Remmers, like, again, I think Remmers is solid. It will be curious because the one thing, though, is that Obwai is on this roster because he was signed off the practice squad for the Texans. When you sign someone off the practice squad, I don't know what the rules. I know for at least the first week they have to be on the active roster. So he will be on the active roster right now. Right now, as of today, I believe the only 3 active tackles are McDermott, Mitchell, and Cedric. Now, will they dress Hermans as well, give him 2 tackles, but he can also play guard? I mean, maybe they go with that. Nate Herbig and then Dan Feeney as the lineman. So you have 4 backup offensive linemen, but you have a couple that can play guard because Remmers can play inside the guard position. Herbig obviously is a guard, Feeney guard center. So you have those backups. It'll be interesting too. I'm curious to see how the roster will be constructed for the Steelers game. Like, how many running backs are they going to carry? How many wide receivers are they going to carry? And really the tight ends too, because I know they played Ruckert a bit. Like, I feel they're going to only carry 3. I doubt they're going to carry more than 4, but we will get into more of that on Friday as well. But look, solid. I just don't get some of it. Like, again, like, I understand that it's tough to change the personality, but just say less of these press conferences, man. Just like the whole fan injury, like it just comes off like you don't understand. And look, I do think Sal's also optimistic. Like, I think that's part of the problem. I think he's optimistic that Zach could have been back. I think he's optimistic Fant was only going to miss a little time. But look, just be more discreet, because unfortunately now for Saleh, he has to understand he's in a position now where I don't think we've gotten to that point yet where the fan base has turned on Saleh, but I do think we are approaching the critical mass of that, where I think a lot of Jet fans are, if they're not at that point already, are getting close to that fence and that switching point because of multiple factors. And I've talked about it before. I think it's seeing what's going on across the league with other head coaches, and it's seeing what he's done through the first 20 games. And look, as painful as it is to bring this up, you look at the first 20 games of their career. Adam Gase was 7-13. Joe Judge was 7-13. One of the other Giants head coaches was 7-13. Robert Saleh's won 5 games. And I would argue Robert Saleh has had a much more talented team, especially now, than they had under Adam Gase. So the talent level to me is at a point where last year, okay, especially with the injuries, the Jets didn't have the talent to compete with these teams. I'm looking at the talent that they have now. They should be able to compete. This should be a week where they can win. So I'm curious to see what they think. Let's change it up. Play Remmer and activate Mims and Huff. So, Melvin, as you know, I'm a huge Huff fan. I completely agree with the Huff take. Remmer is interesting. Again, I feel like I would play him at right tackle, move Mitchell to left. That would be my preference, but we'll have to see. To me, Cedric's going to be activated, so we'll see what they do with Remmers. But Mims is a hard one, Melvin, because I'm at the point now too where Corey Davis has been a weird player for the Jets because the Jet fan, and I get part of it, feels like he's been a disappointment. He was a free agent sign. They feel like he hasn't lived up to it. But in the realistic world, I don't think he's been that bad, Corey Davis. And here's the thing with Corey Davis. People are like, oh, the Jets, a bad signing, a bad signing. Has it been a great signing? Probably not. But here's the thing with him. The thing with Corey Davis is they signed him as a number 2 receiver. They're paying him about 12 to 13 million a year. I mean, it's the Giants, for example, paid Kenny Galladay to be a 1. They paid him $70 million and have 4 more years on that contract. The Jets gave Davis basically a 2-year contract. They can get out of that contract with basically no penalties this year. And to their credit and to Davis's credit, when he has been out there, again, he's had drops, he's been inconsistent, but look, last year, 9 games, 14.5 yards per reception, 4 touchdowns, 14 and a half yards per reception. This year so far, targeted 19 times, 10 catches, 187 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, if you look at that, project that through a 17-game schedule, he's on pace to get about 1,000 yards and a couple touchdowns for a number 2 receiver. So, look, is he great? No. Has he been disappointed to the fan base? I get it, but really, when he's your number 3 receiver, that's a pretty good wide receiving core. And with Mims, I don't know what it is with Mims. Part of the problem with Mims, Melvin, is I see the talent there, but I do wonder if there's something just off with Mims, because last year when he did get in the games, he had penalties lining up. He had trouble just following simple procedures. And look, to this coaching staff and to this offense, you want someone that can run complex routes, that relies on their route running to get open rather than their physical ability. It just feels like a square peg round hole with Mims. And I've been saying I put this poll out on my Twitter yesterday. And actually, let me look that up and see what you guys said. So I put out a poll on Rich Sports Talk on Twitter, which is at the handle at Rich Sports Talk. Really simple and easy. So again, guys, if you would like to follow me rant and rave during live games on Twitter, make sure to give me a follow. So I basically put out a poll yesterday asking for the Giants and Jet fans, is a 4th rounder for Denzel Mims a good swap for both teams? This, of course, coming off the Nathan Shepard injury. 71% said yes, 28% said no. Like, to me, that seems like a legitimate partnership. And look, I even teased Jason Pinnock straight up for Denzel Mims at this point. I think that would be a fair trade. So we fixed the O-line position and not the safety position. Joyner, look, New York Jets, Florida, completely agree. If you are from Florida, I just want to say personally, I hope you guys are okay with the hurricane down there. Hope you and your family are safe. I hope, again, I'm just reading that it says NJX Florida, so I'm assuming you're from Florida. Again, if I'm wrong, please let me know, but hope that you and your family are safe if you are in Florida with the hurricane going on. The safety position is going to be tough to fix. So the question would be, how would you address it? Near Tampa holding on. So that's good. So hopefully everything works out okay. The safety position is a tricky one to fix. Now, I know and it's funny when I mention his name and more, I don't get killed in the comments, which is Ashton Davis. Personally, I'd like to see Ashton Davis play more than Joyner at this point. Look, I don't think they want to play Adams because he's still a bit raw. Will Parks, I think, has proven enough. I'd like to see them play Parks a little bit more. Look, Whitehead, they've paid a ton of money to. I think Whitehead's going to play regardless because, again, I don't think they have a better option, and he is better against the run than he has been against the pass this year. Again, the passing stats have been horrendous. Look, the problem, too, is, where are you getting safety help? One trade I would recommend, for the Giants, if you were to offer the Giants now, because you're getting a player involved, I don't know if the Giants would give up. Now, again, the Jets also released Pinnock, so I don't know what they personally feel about him, but if you could trade Mims for Pinnock and you get a 6th rounder from the Giants, you get a 6th rounder Pinnock and basically for Denzel Mims, would you do that? Potentially. So the other thing too is I'm just not sure which safeties are available. No one's giving up a starting caliber safety. So at best right now, you would have to look at either a safety that was cut that or on a practice squad that you're crossing your fingers could be good, or a backup that you've scouted that you think could be on another team. But look, with the amount of injuries we see in the NFL, especially if it's a really good team, I don't think they're going to give you a safety right now. And I don't see Joe Douglas giving up draft picks. Did someone pick up Bam? When you mean Bam, which Bam? So Melvin, just give me a little more context for that. Yeah, New York Jets, Florida. Yeah, stay safe. I know it's crazy down there in Florida right now. So again, hopefully you guys and fam okay. It's going to take another draft, not quite there. Look, I disagree with Dennis. Oh, Bam, the running back. Yeah, but I don't think running back's not the problem right now. I'm going to look that up really quick. Yeah, let me look up Zonovan Knight. I don't think he's. I thought he was on the Jets practice squad. Last I checked. Let me check really quickly. Yeah, he's on the practice. He's on the Jets practice squad, so they could elevate him. So yeah, he's still there. Uh, yeah. To be honest with you, I'd rather bring back if I don't know if he's still available. I'd rather bring back Tevin Coleman over Ty Johnson, and it's for a very simple reason. It's basically I think he's a better pass blocking back. And look, the way the offensive line is right now, I would like a back that could share. But look, Tevin Coleman might not be explosive, but on third down, good blocking running back. I think that's something the Jets desperately use. It's going to take another draft. Look, it shouldn't take 20,000 drafts though. I mean, the Jets have had a bunch of drafts. Like, look, you look at the Jaguars right now. Yeah, I understand they've had a bunch of top drafts, but they're turning it around. The Giants had one draft, and look, the scary thing for the Giants is that draft hasn't looked great. Evan Neal has struggled. Kayvon just got back. I mean, their receiver hasn't played a game, and yet they're still competing. So, like, it shouldn't take 20,000 drafts. And look, there's always going to be a weakness to your team because of the salary cap, because of the resources. There's always going to be weaknesses to the team. Yeah, Coleman was the best blocking back we had. That's why I was surprised he was cut. I think he should be back. Motivate T. Talent isn't the issue. Coaching is the issue. Other company would have this team competing. Like it's hard to disagree. Like you look at the talent. Like I make this case right now. The Jets have one of the top 5 corner tandems in football with DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. I don't think that's a crazy statement, not only statistically but with how talented they are. And they're both and you have the oldest is what, 25, 26. That could be a great corner tandem for the next couple of years. And this should be a corner tandem that allows your pass rushers to get home because you have good coverage in the secondary. I mean, the corner position's so good that you have Bryce Hall, for example, not even playing. That's how talented it is. Now, actually, that's a good point. So let me also bring this up too, because the Jets are in a weird position. Now, let me preface this by saying it because I don't want people to jump down my throat. And this will be kind of one of our final thoughts today. So Bryce Huff isn't playing. I think Bryce Huff should be playing. If the Jets are not going to play Bryce Huff for whatever reason, could they trade him to get a piece on this team to help improve this team? And I look at, for example, Denzel Mims and Bryce Hall. If I'm the Jets right now, and it looks like they feel comfortable with Michael Carter as their corners, they obviously like Brandon Echols better than Bryce Hall. If I'm this Jet team and Bryce Hall isn't playing, could you make a trade to trade Bryce Hall to find another free safety? Like, I do think that there's got to be a team, maybe not this week, but there's got to be a team out there that could use a cornerback, a proven cornerback that you can use and maybe swap for a safety. Like, I would be looking to improve this roster. Now, I don't think any team's going to give you a tackle at this point because it's a premium position. We've seen a lot of tackle injuries already in the NFL this year. I don't think the Jets need to add running backs. I don't think they need to add any more pieces on the offense personally outside the offensive line. Now, defensively, they've been better against the run. Could you add maybe a linebacker? But I would prioritize the safety over the linebacker position. So, look, if you are the Jets, yeah, someone would sign Hall today without question. If you're the Jets, And Motivate Team brings up a great point. Arthur Smith competing, Doug Pearson, he's an asterisk because look, he won a freaking Super Bowl. I thought the Eagles firing him was idiotic. Now Sirianni's been great for them, but I would make the case that Dable's the biggest one because Dable, to me, of all the coaches, like the Giants, you saw it Monday night. The Giants are not a talented football team. They have a god awful offensive line. They're basically playing with a backup quarterback. Like you can tell that they're a quarterback and probably one draft away from really turning it. But they're going to be a feisty team all year. To be honest, they are looking like the team the Jets should be this year, which is a team that is maybe a little bit playing over their skis or expectations and really looking good. I mean, the Jets have only led 22 seconds this year, guys. So, but look, I just look at it too, like if, especially the way this roster is, the Jets now have like Vinny Curry, who is likely coming back and not playing. I mean, the Jets for a team have depth and players that other teams would likely want. So I don't get, like, if you're not going to play Bryce Huff, if you're not going to play Bryce Hall, look, I know we form personal attachment, and I would rather have Huff over anyone on this team because I think he's the best situational speed rusher on this team. And you look at his pass rush win rate, was one of the best on this team last year. Look, if I'm this team, I am looking to try to trade Bryce Hall to try to get a safety. Now, I'm trying to think of like a couple of safeties that could potentially be on the block right now. One play, look, like I know some people might say Bates, but look, I don't think Bates is going to go to the Jets, and they're going to have to pay a premium for him to really go out there and get him. I'm just trying to really think of like, is there a safety? I'm trying to go through all the safeties in my head. Like, are there safeties out there before the trade deadline that could be on the market? So I'm just trying to go through it. I mean, Chuck Clark with the Ravens. I mean, look, they've drafted Kyle Hamilton. He's going to play a lot. And look, they've already brought in Hamilton. Like Chuck Clark for the Ravens is a good player. I really like Chuck Clark. I would explore him with the Ravens. And look, that's an organization that makes sense too, which makes sense. Where you look at that team right now with Clark, like also they've had a connection there. Joe Douglas was a former head coach, head coach, owner. No, Jesus, my brain. Oh my God, sorry guys. He was a former assistant there that worked in the scouting department. So he still has the connections there. I mean, Chuck Clark to me should be a starting safety in the NFL. And look, it worked out for the Ravens where they got Williams and they also got Kyle Hamilton followed them at 14. So if I'm the Jets, I'd be calling the Ravens right now because Jesse Bates, look, I get it. But Jesse Bates, you also have to pay a lot of money. It's going to cost more of a premium. Now, you look at the safety, you look at right now the Ravens, it actually feels like to me, and guys, agree with me or disagree with me. And Motivate T, the veteran, that's the other thing about players coach too. Like I am worried, like I've seen him really, and me and Kayla talked about this yesterday. If you haven't seen the video, go check it out on the channel about the loyalty to the veterans and how that could be a detriment. But if I'm the Jets, I'd be calling the Ravens right now and saying, like, look, we know your secondaries had issues, the corners have issues. If I'm the Jets right now, Bryce Hall straight up for Clark, I would do it. Because I think Clark could slide into Joyner's spot, upgrade the safety position. If you're not going to play Bryce Hall, you might as well get a player that can make an impact. So if I'm the Jets, I would look at Chuck Clark. I think he would be a good player for this team. And he's still young. He's still a young player. And I know the Ravens have struggled defensively. Maybe help them out with Bryce Hall. Maybe that could be a situation where it makes sense for the Jets to make a move there. Like the safety position has been a detriment to this team. And it's funny because the defensive line is underachieved, but I don't think they've played terribly. But you look at the safeties. Safety has been woof. I mean, another interesting player. I don't love this. Could be Harrison Smith of the Vikings. Look, he's a Pro Bowl safety. He's 33. It's a big contract. I don't know how it would fit on the Jets cap, but it does save the Vikings $3.5 million. I do wonder if maybe they're just trying to move off of that contract. Could the Jets absorb it? Now, the biggest problem is going to be the cap charges. I don't know if the Jets are going to want to take that on right now. Yeah, I'm just looking at different players that they could go after. I'm just looking at potentially offensive linemen still. I know Isaac Samolo, the guard from the Eagles, could be an interesting backup offensive lineman for this team. It is interesting too. Could Devin Bush be available as a linebacker? I don't know how he would fit the scheme, but could he be someone that's been reportedly on the block for the Steelers? Although I doubt they're going to move him now with the Want injury. But look, I think Clark would be an intriguing candidate for this Jet team. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say from the Ravens. Because look, if the Jets aren't going to play these guys, maybe even Denzel Mims, if you had to throw Mims in a 6 or something, I'm at the point now, the Jets need safety help. Look, if Mims isn't going to play on this team, let's trade for an edge rusher. Look, the problem is the Jets have the most money and draft capital invested on the defensive line of any team in the NFL. Their hope is going to get going. And look, my biggest thing for New York Jets, Florida, Jermaine Johnson had the best pass rush win rate of any rookie last week. He needs to get more playing time. I'm sorry, put him on the edge. Maybe put John Franklin Myers more on the inside to help him get going. But look, Jermaine Johnson, I understand they invested money in John Franklin Myers, but he invested the 25th pick in draft capital to get Jermaine Johnson. Let him go out there, let him play. He might be one of your best pass rushers. Lawson, to me, I don't know if it's the Achilles. I don't know if it's just Cincinnati where he does pressures but can't get to the quarterback. Look, I want to see more Jermaine Johnson. I'm at the point now, too, where Jermaine Johnson should be on the field a lot more. Look, let's be honest. More of these guys should be on the field more on. Quinn Williams shouldn't be playing 67% of the snaps. And also, you look, too, Jermaine Johnson's got the fourth highest rookie grade as a rookie defensive edge. And look, you saw it last week, too, did a really good job in the run game and had an 86.4 grade according to PFF. And look, I really like what he does on that defensive line, especially in the run game. He should be out there every down or at least every other down. Personally, if I was the Jets right now, I would have Jermaine Johnson out there for first and second down. If you want to give him a blow, you sub him with Martin or you sub him with Huff on the third down if it's a passing down. Again, it might not be sexy for the stats, but Jermaine Johnson's proven he's a really good run defender, which is why I was so high on him in the draft. And look, he needs to be playing more. And they have capital in the edge rushers. They just need the edge rushers to get going. So again, guys, the big news, Zach Wilson is back. We talked a lot today about the offensive line. We talked a lot about your comments. You guys were awesome as always. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on their Sports Talk. Again, we will have a Friday preview for the game this Sunday. Lots to talk about. The big news of the day, of course, Zach Wilson is back. We talked a lot about this defensive line woes. We talked a lot about everything. And look, and I agree with Drunken Disorderly. He's right. Don't worry. We'll be back on Friday with more great content. Again, guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. If you missed us during the live stream, you can always rewatch it here on YouTube. And, of course, if you didn't get any of your questions in, put them in the comment section below. And I will answer those questions on the next live stream, which will be coming Friday. Again, guys, you were awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next time.